Colts Nation. Whoa. Oh, my goodness. Colts without a defensive coordinator. Matt Eberflus leaves for Chicago. Wow. Gentlemen, what a move today. I mean, holy smokes. Talk about there's been some rumblings, but it's official, man. Colts don't have a defensive coordinator. Welcome on, Lawrence. Always good to have you. Derek, also, always good to see your face. Guys, what in the world? What is your reaction to this? Lawrence, what is your reaction?
Honestly, I wish Flus well. I hope that he has a great head coaching career out there in Chi-Town. I get that there's a bunch of Colts fans out there that are not happy with how Matt Eberflus was running the defense the last couple years because they're, pocket quarterbacks seem to tear us up. I get that. I understand that. But the fact of the matter was he was highly sought after. We've had top 10 defenses every year that he's been the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts, and that's what got him all those interviews. Congratulations to him. And now the long search begins for Ballard and Frank Reich of finding his replacement.
Yes.
Yep. I mean, I was happy for him. I mean, I wasn't shocked that he was going to get a head coaching job. He was, probably one of the top 3 or 4 candidates in the whole market about getting a head coaching job. I'm just kind of shocked that it was the Bears. We heard a lot about going to the Jags. That was the initial first thing because he had 2 interviews with them right off the bat. It sounded like things were in motion for him, but when they hired their new GM, and he's had experience with Eberflus in the past, so kind of makes sense that they would trust each other and they would mix very well. So, yeah, I mean, we'll definitely get a chance now to see a new defensive coordinator come in, implement their system, see if it changes, and then maybe we can make the decision on whether or not we were too hard on Matt Eberflus at times throughout his tenure here. But yeah, I wish him the absolute best.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely wish Coach Flus the best where he goes. And, if there's any other guys that he takes along with him, we wish them the best in Chicago. But, guys, now we have to talk about this. This begs the question, where are the Colts going to go for defensive coordinator? I mean, there's a lot of routes the Colts could go to try to find their guy. They could go more internally. I know there's been some rumblings about a couple names, that have come to mind. Or the Colts could look externally. There's some guys that could potentially make sense for the Colts, to potentially look at. Lawrence, I know that you've done a lot of looking into some of these potential candidates, and you've kind of given your opinion on this guy would fit for what the Colts want to do. This guy maybe not so much. So I'll just let you take the floor because you're kind of the expert in this right now. Where do you potentially want to see the Colts go as far as potential candidates?
There's a lot of names being floated out right now everywhere between Schwartz and Fangio and a bunch of other guys out there that, the defensive coordinator for the Ravens was just let go, So, that's the situation. There's a bunch of guys out there that have names already. And I understand that, ever since Flus has been here, we've ran this cover 2/cover 3 scheme, and it's paid dividends. The defense is built to play that style of defense, and I get it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be pigeonholed into that scheme moving forward. It's not like we don't have the guys that we could play a traditional man defense or something of that nature if we need. I mean, this past year when the Colts played man defense, which they played more of man than they played zone this year, they played very, very well. So there are a lot of guys out there. I think the Colts should not pigeonhole themselves, like I said, into looking for that, Seattle cover 2 or cover 3, coaching tree type situation, as a lot of people are talking about. Keep your mind open, keep it broad. Definitely look inside first, I think, because those are the guys that are, familiar with how things have been ran, knows exactly the guys that are already here, and knows how to implement those guys into the schemes that they may be wanting to play. So, you're looking at Rowe and Williams as guys, potential, in-house guys that could possibly step up into that defensive coordinator position. But don't forget, you got guys like, established names. I understand, Schwartz is a name that's out there because of his Eagles ties with Frank Reich. That's a possibility. That's an established name. Vic Fangio, another guy, established name, someone who I think would fit well in this system. Don't bring a guy in who has traditionally just worked with your bigger, heavier linebackers, right? I don't want, like the Steelers. The Steelers aren't used to using linebackers that are faster. Guys off the Steelers tree, I'm not exactly high on right now. Now, you want someone, like I said, that has that situation, that understands how to use that second level of defense. I've got a name that I have dug into hardcore. I've looked, I've seen it, I've tweeted about it. You guys might have seen it. Yep. And I have really watched a lot of tape with this guy's defense. Back when he was before he was with the Niners, he was with the Miami Dolphins. And during his time there, they were a top 5 defense in the NFL. He leaves, they fall off a bit. He goes to the Niners. He goes to the Niners as Defoe leaves. He comes in, and you're like, well, how's he going to react with this? Well, guess what? He's done pretty darn good, okay? Chris Kosurek, the defensive line coach for the San Francisco 49ers, has been an absolute stud. He's 43. He's young. He's up and coming. He doesn't have a name yet. That's what I like about him, because he's still adapting his style, right? Which means he's not going to be complete. He hasn't been coaching for, 25 years and dead set in his ways, right? You want somebody who's going to bend and grow as the NFL grows, as offenses grows, as you go from one team to another, because you're not going to play the Kansas City Chiefs the same way you're going to play the Tennessee Titans, right? On defense, you need somebody who's very flexible and can change things up. That was a problem that Eberflus had for the majority of his career. Was he generally seemed to play different quarterbacks the exact same way, even though their skill sets were completely different. And that's a major issue. But Chris Kosurek has been able to come in, no matter where he goes, brings out the best of his players, seems to develop talent very, very well, brings an intensity. He loves bringing extra pressure. He likes the man concept, that man press, which I think we have the guys in the secondary to do that. And, he wherever he goes, his defenses get a lot of pressures and sacks. So Chris Kosurek, that's my name that I want to throw into that pool. I hope Ballard and Reich are looking at that, because it's somebody that I think should be looked at going into the future. But yeah, I've talked quite a bit.
Yeah, Matt obviously agrees with you there. So one name that you and I were talking about before we started this, and I was talking about Mike Zimmer, and I've seen it a few times in the chat already. People talking about, he has the experience, obviously has been around the league for a long time. You said not so pleasantly that you kind of would prefer us stay away from Mike Zimmer. Could you explain to our viewers as to why that is?
Mike Zimmer traditionally has not really ran with a lot of linebackers that have the speed and agility that we have. He's always had those linebackers that are traditionally your bigger run stopping guys. He lets his secondary handle most of your pass coverage, right? Now, does he like blitzing and stuff? Yeah, sure, absolutely. But he's never had a hardcore Darius Leonard or Bobby Okereke style type linebackers, which is one of the strengths of our defense, and we really need to implement that strength, in my opinion. And we need to find someone that will find a way to not only use them as well as what Eberflus did, because let's face it, our linebackers did quite a bit in that style, but maybe even expand on that a little bit more, maybe able to use them a little bit more in blitz packages and things of that nature.
Gotcha. Cody, what about you, man?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I think you got to get a guy. The more you talked about Kosurek, I agree. Like, it would make so much logical sense for me to get a guy that would focus on the defensive line, because that's been your issue, right? That's the whole reason you fired Brian Baker. The whole reason you felt like you needed to basically reset that whole unit, that whole position group. So, yeah, I mean, I would have no issue with that. I want a guy that, like you said, I think, can adapt on the fly. Like you said, that was one of our biggest issues with Eberflus, was it just kind of felt like sometimes he was setting his ways to a fault, and love him or hate him, that was just kind of who he was as a defensive coordinator. But you're right. You do need a guy that can adapt on the fly. Something interesting, Lawrence, that Derek and I talked about, when we just kind of reacted to it, is this will be Frank Reich's first, head coach hire. Because if you remember, Eberflus wasn't a guy that Frank Reich, necessarily was involved in. He came before Reich came. And then
but I think Frank Reich stated in a press conference that he was going to be the dude that he was going to hire, even if he wasn't already here. So
you do wonder how much of that is, we have to believe in our guy too. I get you. Right. I get what you mean. But no, I do wonder, honestly, Lawrence, if the Colts, Frank Reich, we know how aggressive this offense is. And it kind of seemed like the offense and the defense in certain ways were kind of polar opposites, where the defense was so simple, the offense was so complex. And sometimes I'm just like, what if this defense schemed up some more things? I felt like they started to do that a little bit, but like, could you see the Colts potentially going after somebody who was a little bit more aggressive? Like the stuff like the loafs and, turnovers, the stuff like that. Those things obviously need to stay, like those are important. The effort stuff is important. But also, like, being more aggressive when it matters, and that's what you're talking about with this guy you talked about. Is it feels like he could do that when needed.
Oh yeah, definitely, and that's the great thing about when you had a DC that was respected, right? Matt Eberflus was respected in this building. Whether or not the fans out here like him or not like him, as a coach, the players and media and everybody inside that building absolutely loved Matt Eberflus. Okay. So some of the positive things, like you talk about, not allowing lows and getting a lot of effort out there and creating turnover, those things will stick around because those are now embedded in the other position coaches and assistant coaches and things of that nature that were under him. So those will continue to happen. What will change is, like what you said, whatever this new defensive coordinator comes in, he's going to have certain things that he really emphasizes, whether it be, getting after the quarterback or attention to detail when it comes to tackling, things of that nature. Because let's face it, guys, from what I saw from Eberflus, and you were talking about this earlier, the second half of the season, Eberflus looked like he was really progressing as a play caller, right? He was calling a lot more man. He was starting to change things up, starting to adapt, but it was too little too late. By then, everybody already seen, well, you gave up 24 points in the fourth quarter to the Ravens and, this and that, and Colts fans were done with it. Okay. And I get that. And I understand that, but he was growing. What we need now is, if you get this guy or whoever it is that they bring in, when they start, he'll probably talk to a lot of the assistants and get a feel for how Eberflus was prior and know the things that he implemented already in this defense. If he's worth his salt, he will. And then he will work off of that and not just completely ignore what Eberflus started, but build on that. And I think that's going to be a big point of emphasis in the interviews that are shortly to come.
I think one coach that I've been hearing a lot about And it's someone that I think when we first heard Eberflus, getting interest from some people, and this was a name that kept getting brought up, and that was Chris Richard, the Saints defensive backs coach, was with Seattle when the Legion of Boom started coming out. He helped organize that. And then, he went to Dallas shortly after in 2018, went to the Saints 2 years ago. So, has helped organize quite a few good defensive back rooms and, is more of a typical kind of aggressive play style because that's just how he likes his cornerbacks to play. What do you think when you look at a guy like a Chris Richard who, is a defensive backs coach that's coming in, has an aggressive mindset when it comes to his playing style? What would you think of that?
Well, I think that'd be a good situation when it comes to, your secondary coverage and things of that nature. Like you said, he comes from that Seattle coaching tree. He understands that zone scheme. So if you're wanting to stick with your zone scheme, that will fit well. But at the same time, the only issue I have with a defensive backs coach is how well do they understand the front seven and that play up front?
Yeah.
Right. And when you are a zone coverage team, we all know all too well, the only way to make a zone coverage work is to get pressure on the quarterback. And you need to have an understanding and stuff of that right there. So if you come in as that guy, whether it be him or somebody else that is traditionally a defensive backs coach that loves the zone scheme, you better have someone ready in the wings to take over Brian Baker's position, that's going to be able to develop the talent. Because I'm sorry, I think the Colts have a ton of talent in that front seven. I think Brian Baker completely whiffed on developing that talent and making it work. Okay. And that's why I was calling for his job before he was fired. I'm just all surprised that actually happened. But yeah, it's a situation as a defensive backs coach, you better have somebody set for that front seven if you're a zone scheme defensive backs coach coming in.
Cody, real quick before I let you do something else, I have one more guy that I want to hear your opinion on, Lawrence, and that is Lovie Smith. Again, that name has been thrown around forever. Lovie Smith has been everywhere, done that. He's all this and that, and obviously a very respected coach around the league. What do you think about a Lovie Smith kind of guy? I know you talked about, probably staying away from somebody who has the pedigree and all that. But, he is a guy that, usually gets a lot out of his players. And, unfortunately for him, he's stuck coaching the Texans of all things. You'd think that him going into a system like this with the Colts, maybe he could afford to maybe let a few more things fly out.
Again, I understand why he's got the pedigree, he's got the name. I want to stay away from those guys just because of what you just said. They're stuck in their scheme. It's my scheme. We're going to play it this way no matter what. And you need someone that is going to be able to come in and realize what you've got and be able to adjust. It's just like the way Frank Reich coaches, right? And Nick Sirianni over with the Eagles now. Mm-hmm. He takes the talent he has and he draws up schemes and plays to make that talent work the best on the field, right? And when you get old traditional guys who are stuck with their schemes, then they're forcing guys to play out of what they like and what they are best at. And I'm a little bit worried about something like that. There is another name that's out there that's been talked about a lot that I think we should talk about, but not very long because I don't think he's going to be in the realm for defensive coordinator soon.
Now, are you talking about Martindale?
No, actually. No, I'm actually talking. No, I'm talking about an ex-head coach that was just terminated a couple weeks ago for the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course. Everyone mentions his name, right? Of course, that would be the absolute most perfect scenario for the Colts. It's just the only thing that sucks is it's again, you would think just with his pedigree and who he is, it feels like he's just going to get a head coaching job somewhere. I know everyone is trying to. Ironically enough, what the media and what the fans are doing right now is they're actually doing us a favor because they're saying, oh, there was tension between Flores and the GM. These two hated each other. They were mixing it up. Flores was not nice to him. Flores was not a good dude. All this to these people. And it's like, if anything, that makes me feel better because because we all know he was a player's coach. I mean, the players loved playing for him. You don't win 8 of your last 9 games if you don't enjoy playing for the coach. I mean, that's the truth. But again, yeah, I feel like there's just no way he doesn't get a head coaching job somewhere. I just don't know if he'd want to drop back from a head coaching position to a DC like that.
Yeah, that's the issue. Okay, I'm not saying that I wouldn't take Brian Flores. Right now, he would be at the top of my list. I think he would be fantastic, but there's the expectations it's not there. He's going to get a head coaching job somewhere. I can't believe that Miami let him go. Because their problems had nothing to do with his coaching, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing. Now there was rumors rolling around, that he was basically talking to Tua and saying, basically I should have at halftime I should have drafted Mac Jones this past off season. I've heard that out there, and if that's actually what happened, then I understand why he was let go, because you just don't say something like that to a player, especially at halftime in the middle of a game. And the guy that, you went all in for the year before, but I don't know how much, how much solidity that report has, so I wasn't there. I don't know if that's actually what happened, but absolutely Flores would be a great signing for a defensive coordinator, but he's going to get a head coaching job somewhere. And if he doesn't, then sure. Obviously, Ballard's probably already called up Flores. He's probably already took him out to dinner, wined and dined him and said, dude.
Hey, man, I know you're keeping your options open. But, hey, if you ever want to come here, man, I'll throw in a new SUV to pick you up. All right, it's all yours. I don't care what I got to get you. Just get him into the freaking building.
Here's my issue: even if he doesn't get one this year, he's probably going to get one next year.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So then, if we hire him as a defensive coordinator, lose the guy. You would have to think that, right? If he doesn't get one this year, you hire him as whoever hires him as a defensive coordinator has to sit there and be like, all right, we got to keep our option open next year because there's a good chance that he'll be picked up by somebody next year.
Right.
And now we have to, 1 year later fill that that spot again. And that would be awful. That would be don't play musical chairs with your coordinators like we have our quarterback situation the last 4 years.
I would just say this. I would just say in counter argument to that. If a guy is going to be okay to go from a head coach and turn down other head coaching opportunities to go back to a DC, then obviously he either really hates the responsibility of the head coach and he doesn't think that there's anything that's good for him, or he just really wants to be with a specific team where he feels he has the ability to implement what he wants. And that'd be the only reason I could think of is if he went to Indianapolis for that reason, I would think, maybe for a couple years he sticks around. Maybe that other head coach opportunity, the one that he really wants, opens up and then they find him. But obviously right now, only certain teams are looking for one. Maybe he just doesn't think that a specific team is ready for him at that moment.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, you go look at an ex-head coach that was terminated not long ago and ended up becoming a coordinator for Alabama. right?
Yeah.
We all know who I'm talking about because we're Colts fans and we made fun of him year after year with his GM responsibilities, right? Bill O'Brien, there's rumors right now saying that Josh McDaniels might end up going to the Raiders, and Bill O'Brien could end up being the offensive coordinator for, the New England Patriots. Now, as a play caller, I thought Bill O'Brien was a darn good play caller.
Yeah. 100%.
He was just an awful GM.
He was an awful GM. He should never be ever entrusted to deal with player personnel ever. As a coach, he was pretty good. I always thought he was really good with the Texans until he was tasked with responsibility to be the GM as well. That was atrocious.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's kind of tainted the image of some people's minds on Bill O'Brien when actually he was pretty good as a coach.
So that same situation could happen in the future with other coaches, like what you're talking about with Brian Flores. He might step back for a minute, as you were talking about, become a coordinator for a year or two, and then step back into the limelight again. It's definitely a situation that I agree with that could happen. I'm sorry, my cat just walked right in front of me and completely
I didn't even notice.
took my attention away from what we was talking about.
Wait, Matt saying, I think Bill O'Brien be a fantastic GM and coach for the Jags. Made a lot of great trades in Houston. Hey, hey, if he's willing to trade me Josh Allen to this defensive line for a second-round pick and Carson Wentz, I'll take him right now.
I would take either Josh Allen's. If he went to the Jags, I'd take Josh Allen to defensive end for them. That's fine.
All I'm saying is when the Josh Allen of Jacksonville faced the Josh Allen of Buffalo, one Josh Allen was clearly better than the other Josh Allen. And I'll give you the hint, it wasn't the quarterback.
Right. And that Josh Allen for the Jags really made things very difficult on us in the Week 18 game. I hate bringing up bad memories, but it is what it is.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Eric Fisher couldn't block my grandma.
Oh, he was bad. He was really bad. He was really, 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 really bad.
I still wake up screaming and sweating in the middle of the night thinking of Eric Fisher under left tackle.
Cody, you need to start focusing on different dreams, man. It's over.
It's a nightmare. It's a recurring nightmare.
Watch it anymore. It's okay.
Right. Brian Young, I just wanted to let you know that I haven't actually watched a lot of college this year. I usually watch that during the off season, and the NFL postseason is still rolling, so I don't get into that tape until probably another 3 weeks. So I'm sorry.
That's all right. So one more thing I'll ask you. I saw somebody mention it earlier in the chat, and it was kind of interesting to me. I'm pretty positive Darius Butler made this as a joke, but I mean,
it was a joke.
I was going to say, hey, I mean, look, Darius Butler obviously knows his stuff. All right. We know he breaks down a lot of film.
Darius Butler for DC and Robert Mathis for D-line coach.
Please.
Who says no?
For heaven's sake, I would still think it would be a definite upgrade at the defensive line coach bringing in Robert Mathis. I thought that they should have done that a while ago.
Well,
but Butler at DC though, I don't know. I don't know if he has the desire to want to do that.
Let's be fair now. Right now, Robert Mathis has got something going on, and he's just waiting for it to kick off. That gridiron gang thing that he's got going on is doing very, very well. And he's just waiting on one of those guys that he's been working with to pop off. And once that happens, he's going to make a lot of money and get a lot of traction in that. And I think that's what he's doing. I talked to DeQuell Jackson literally like an hour and a half ago, right? Like we was doing our live stream before this. And I was talking to him about, have you ever thought about throwing your hat in the coaching ring, right? And he says, well, there's a reason why a lot of us players who coaches say we should coach don't coach. And that's because a lot of players don't have the patience to deal with with players who won't listen. Like if you're teaching them one thing and they do something completely different, you know, on the field or something, that'll just pop them right off, and they won't have a job much longer because they'll do or say something that will, you know, not be well liked in the upper office.
Yeah, totally. You're right. I can only imagine somebody pissing Robert Mathis off.
Right.
Robert Mathis goes off on his little tangent.
Robert Mathis will go gangsta
that's
on
the player side of him. Yeah, that would be the player side of him coming out. Because obviously, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a different show when a former player becomes a coach / management executive, because it's different, because you have that experience of being on the field, but then that sometimes can skew you in a different direction from somebody who has either been out of the league for 10 plus years or just has never done that in the first place. So
absolutely
makes sense.
And yeah, I mean, to tag on this one, no saying, yeah, Mathis has been working with Turay. I mean, yeah, that's
utterly,
why,
completely and utterly disagree with that.
That's his boy.
I completely and utterly disagree with that statement.
Yeah, I won't bring it up. Yeah, I mean,
okay, so Turay,
go ahead.
Think about this. Okay, first off, Turay has only played 20% of the snaps, and it's not because he wasn't available. He only missed 3 games this year, right, with a hip injury. Mm-hmm. But he has 5.5 sacks, okay, and a whole bunch of pressures off of 20% of the snaps. Mm-hmm. And then you go and look at everybody else. He's like second or third on this team in sacks. Then you go look at assists, and only 20% of the snaps, right? He only comes in on that NASCAR package that Eberflus like to talk about.
Yeah.
Then you go and you look at his assists, which ain't even something that comes onto the stat line. It's only people who, like me, watch film where you'll see him, he'll get a pressure, he'll force the quarterback out, and it'll force him right into the hands of somebody else. 2 Kwity Paye sacks in the last 4 weeks came from Turay pressures up the gut. All right. So Kimoko Turay, he has missed a few where, you know, he got his hands on him. And then, you know, that's something that, you know, Robert Mathis and him will have to work out on their own. I feel sorry for Turay because you don't miss a quarterback when you got him in your hands. Mathis will get all kind of upset about that. But Turay has showed a lot of explosion. And in all honesty, I've always thought that Turay should be that right defensive end. And I thought Kwity Paye, because of his run stopping ability, should be the left defensive end, because I feel that's more into where they fit better on that defensive line. But, you know, I'll leave it to the professionals to make up and decide how this defense is going to be ran.
I mean, it was funny, Lawrence, because I think you and I think Zach brought it up at one point. When you mentioned it, I think Cody and I were both one of those people that we said, man, it was just disappointing to not see much of Turay this year. And we kind of felt like it was more of a personal issue on ourselves, thinking it was him that was the issue. But then I heard you say 20% of snaps. And then I'm thinking, hold up a second. I have to wait a minute and think. So he only played 20% of snaps, and yet he was third on our team in sacks. I had to kind of step back and I had to think for a minute, okay, that's bringing me to a new light here, making me think, man, what if he had 50% of the snaps? Would we have seen, you know, a potential 10-sack season from Turay this season, rather than seeing guys like Isaac Rochelle in some areas and, you know, other different guys that we had out there? Yeah. So you're right. I mean, I thought, you know, I was one of those guys that kind of bashed Turay a little bit. It sucks that we haven't really seen him get what we thought we could get from 2019. But then I saw you and a bunch of other people mention the fact that Turay got very limited snaps this year because that's just how it went down. And I'm thinking, man, limited production, yet he still produced in those times. I'm thinking, man, maybe this is a guy that we give a little bit more responsibility to next year. Hopefully he stays healthy and we see him take that next step up.
Yeah. When it comes to defensive ends on the Colts, he was number 1, and by a far margin in sacks and pressures compared to snap count. right? I mean, by like more than double than any other defensive end on our team.
Wow. So, I mean, no wonder Brian Baker was fired. His rotations were atrocious. I mean, seriously. Like, it makes more
Right?
sense now, like, why he wasn't brought back. Because, like, if you're out there giving those guys who, let's be honest, they're not near the talent as Kimoko Turay is, if you're giving them more snaps than him, like, you can't really blame the personnel if you're not giving those personnel the allotted snaps. So I totally understand that now a little bit more. Yeah, I was on the same boat. I was like, is it just a Turay issue? You know, like, and maybe part of it was, you know, I don't think he can completely just be absolved. But yeah, you're right, Lawrence. Like, he needs to see more snaps. And hopefully the Colts bring him back because they need as much pressure as they can get. You know, I think they still need to go address a defensive end somehow. But yeah, I mean, I think he can definitely be a very effective guy, you know, in those snaps that he does get, maybe more situationally like they used him, but maybe even more of a bigger role down the stretch. So yeah, I mean, it'll be so interesting to see how the new defensive line coach uses these guys that he's able to have, you know? So
Absolutely.
Hopefully better than what they did last year.
All right. Well, I know Cody's got to get going here in a minute. We'll finish it off with this one. This isn't necessarily a DC question here, but we'll have Lawrence answer it. Is Dayo ultimately better suited at defensive end or at 3-tech? It's a very, very big question there.
That is a very good question. He is legitimately built almost identical to DeForest Buckner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Skill set and everything. Very, very similar. But the thing is, he's still coming off that Achilles injury, right?
Yeah.
We need to see. I haven't gotten into the film yet to see his initial burst because that was something that was really good on college tape before that happened. I haven't gotten into the film yet, like I said, you know, but I need to see what his burst is like, how quickly he comes off the ball when that ball is snapped. If it's fast enough, I wouldn't mind seeing him take some defensive end snaps because DeForest Buckner does a good job when he flips over the defensive end. He does fine when he's sitting at the 1-tech too, over there at the nose tackle position. Mm-hmm. That's why we got Dayo, was to be able to, you know, fill different positions on the line at any point in time. Him and Buckner on there on the line at the same time is an absolute nightmare when you're in that pass rush mentality mode. So I think he's better suited for the 3-tech to answer the question, but at the same time, if that initial step is still as good as what it was when he was at Virginia Tech, I think, right?
No, it was I think it was Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt. That's right. I'm looking at the helmets and seeing the black and the VT and sorry. But if it's still the way it was then, I think he could be a very good defensive end.
Yeah. And you know, it may take a little bit for him to get that back because I mean, he's just coming off of it. Maybe give him an off season to maybe try and get that back, and we'll see. We'll get a better idea of what he looks like this next off season. But having a 6'5", 73 or 74 inch wingspan. I mean, it's just insane wingspan for a guy of that size. I mean, has a 3-inch wingspan longer than LeBron James, who's 6'8", by the way. And, you know, it has that kind of motor that he does. I mean, I can only imagine, you know, seeing him at full strength this next year. I'm very excited to see that and see what he can accomplish.
Yes. Lawrence, I thought this could be a good question to answer because I feel like this might be a question a lot of people have. Just explaining the snap rotations of the defensive line, how that's their responsibility, what their responsibility is as a defensive line coach.
Okay, so first off, snap rotation, you got to balance that. All right, because it also has a lot to do with, you know, definitely what position you're in. Are you looking at 1st and 10? Are you looking at 2nd and 8? Are you looking at 3rd and 20? Right. So you're rotating certain guys in due to the, you know, what their ability is best at. Kimoko Turay is one of those guys that you brought in on like your 2nd and 8, 3rd and 6 plus, you know, type situations because it was most likely a passing down. But at the same time, you want to make sure when it comes to snap rotations that certain guys get breaks. You, as for instance, DeForest Buckner, solid dude, great, all pro. But if he plays 100% of the snaps, those last 20% of the snaps that he played in that game most likely is not going to be at his best because he's gassed, right? So you need to bring guys in and rotate, in that situation to make sure that he's playing at or near 100% throughout the entire game. So it's very difficult for us fans to be able to sit down and think, okay, what should the snap count be? Because it's going to adjust as opposed to, how the game flow goes and what you're looking at when it comes to down and distance or game situation, right? If you're looking at a situation where you're in the fourth quarter and you're up by 12 or 14 or 21, you're not going to have your run stopping defensive line out there on the field. If you're in the fourth quarter up by 2 or 3 scores, you need to get pass rush because they're not going to run the ball very much, right? They got to catch up. So you got to make sure that those guys stay fresh as well. And it's very difficult sometimes to make sure you have not only the right guys on the field, but the right percentage of snaps so that they can stay fresh. And I thought that they did in my honest opinion, I thought they did a bad job last year. DeForest Buckner played a ridiculous amount of snaps. And I love him being on the field, but he played too many snaps. He wasn't able to be at his best late in games because he'd been gassed. He's a big dude. I mean, when you're like, 12'8" and 900 pounds, you can't sit there and play 60 freaking snaps, because you're going to be gassed in the fourth quarter. You're not going to get the best play out of him. And that's a problem. That's a situation where Brian Baker should have been able to rotate those guys in, keep people fresh. And I didn't see enough of Kimoko Turay in the beginning of the year rotated in. I was looking, where there was a lot of times where you're looking at 3rd and 10 and you're going to see, like you're talking about, Isaac Rochelle in there instead of Kimoko Turay, where Turay is by far the faster, quicker, more, tough to get your hands on type guy. You want that guy in there over the Isaac Rochelle guy who's better at the run stopping, able to cut inside rather than do your edge rush and push your quarterback up front and let your defensive tackles bring him down. So I hope that answered your question a little bit, but it is all the defensive line's responsibility. The defensive coordinator he's not got the time to sit and think about who needs to be brought in and out, right? He's got to look at the situation and call game plays and the right scheme. And so he's not worried about personnel. It's the position coaches that have to worry about their personnels. Rowe is the guy that's going to be out there going, okay, you, Rock, you played every snap all the way up until the third quarter. I need to take you out and let's throw TJ Carey in for a few snaps, give you a breather, that kind of stuff. The defensive coordinator has absolutely no call generally on that, unless he's seeing something, he don't like. And that's when you're going to end up getting your butt fired because, the defensive coordinator has to step in and do someone else's job. That means you're not doing your job properly,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you hope that with some of these guys that are going to come back, to get guys more rest like DeForest Buckner, if Dayo comes in, has the season that we expect, maybe he takes a few of those snaps. Tyquan Lewis is another one, comes back, plays a few of that 3 tech. We know he can. Maybe that takes a few snaps away, helps DeForest Buckner. Like you said, him later in the season, he gets a few more of those snaps off. Hopefully that makes him a little bit better in those fourth quarters when we really need him. Because we know this Colts defense in the fourth quarter was really bad last year. This team got gassed in the fourth quarter. Certainly hope that, they can make some adjustments and, be able to right that wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Cody, unless you have something else here, I know you have to get going here soon. So unless you have something else, I mean, we can end this.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, again, we want to thank our friend Lawrence Owen, aka Colts Law. If you guys aren't following him on YouTube, I don't know what you guys are doing. Be sure to follow him on YouTube. Link will be in the description. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Hopefully you all enjoyed. Hopefully you guys enjoy your Thursday. And as always, go Colts.